Part 20. The Maxims of Equity. Equity sees that as done what ought to be done. True equity as a universal principle with universal sight will always see the entire picture of any given circumstance, and will see all that must be done as done. Thus we must ask ourselves, is this world one in which such a maxim is being applied? Are we seeing what is done being done in equity and equanimity? Or are we perpetuating the problem because we want what is ours to the detriment of the rest? If we want equity, we must change our ways. What must be done is to create a new world model as one that is best for all beings and all of life. Equity is balance, and in a world based on such a foundational principle, what must be done is to see that all living systems are maintained and nurtured in balance, equanimity, and harmony for all of life and for all living things. In order to do that, the real work is within one's self, not just in the world outside, although, of course, there is much to be done in that regard to heal this world so that true balance for all can be achieved. Equity will not suffer a wrong to be without a remedy. Equity will not allow the continuation of something that is wrong without a remedy. Our entire world system and the requirements and corrections as described herein are based on not suffering the wrongs of this world. With our process of status correction, we bring forth our contribution to a remedy, seeking it to be equitable and balanced, summarized in the phrase, do what is best for all life, and to do no harm. To suffer means to allow, and this maxim is simple in its far-reaching impact, which is to not allow the wrongs of this world to continue, and to see remedy and resolution from the starting point of another equitable principle of do unto others as you would have others do unto yourself. Equity delights in equality. We are all equal in the value of life. For far too long we have participated in the illusions of a monetary system that creates separation and competition through inequality, lack, suffering, disease, poverty, destruction, and war. It is our own internal enemy construct projected into the field of creation in this manifested reality that we must address. The equality we seek is that of our own internal makeup, and with that we can establish a foundation upon which we can proceed forward to heal this world. The purpose and intent of this document, and the larger context of providing practical education, solutions, and applications to achieve one's separation from the bonding nature of the world system, is one that guides us all towards the intended status of true, equitable balance and equality. When we achieve that within ourselves, this world will reflect it. This world system as a game of musical chairs in which only some get the goodies and most suffer the consequences is one in which there is certainly no equality nor delight. Only when every human being and every living system is afforded a true right to life, a balanced life of integrity and opportunity, will we have real equity in this world, and we can thus delight in such equality. One who seeks equity must do equity. This is referring to the fact that equity sees all things in an equation. To achieve the remedy for the wrongs of this world, to arrive at a point of delight in equity, the value of life must be recalculated within the true basis of law that states, do unto others as you would have done unto you. That is true equity. Are you living it now? Are we collectively living it? Ultimately, this maxim is stating that all value must be recognized. If we want the value of our life to be honored, we must value the life in every being. This includes the requirement to consider all things in equity when undertaking a task or relationship, which means the true hidden costs in the production of the world's goods must be considered as to the cost to the environment, the ecosystems, the animals, the plants, and all living things in this world, so that we receive the equity of life because we do the equity of life. Equity aids the vigilant, not those who slumber on their rights. We have slumbered on our rights and have never claimed our true estate and beneficial interests. We have abrogated our true sovereign free will and allowed the world system to dictate and direct how life will be in this world. Look around and see the results. Then face the truth in brutal self-honesty that we have allowed this to happen on our own watch and can blame none other than ourselves. By being asleep at the helm of our own ship of life, we have slept through the day and night as the bars to our prison were painted steely gray and the locks were put in place. The remedy is to claim our rights and stand on them. The remedy is to change our status and release the shackles of bondage suretyship, to remove ourselves from the field of battle, both within and without, and to step off the fictional ship of state on the false sea of commerce. Taking full responsibility for the conditions of this world is the first principle and first step to take our world and our lives into our own control and rebuild it with the principles of equity and balance. We must be ever vigilant. The educational and media model of Pantera de Oro Private Society, Gemstone University, and the Gemstone Global Media Alliance is a contribution to that vigilance. The practical steps to achieve status correction are how the living man or woman returns to wholeness and removes the shackles of the world of bondage. The knowledge and understanding of how to create dynamic and creative private societies outside of the bonded corporate model is how groups, associations, and organizations come together to build visions and projects and communities. For more information on these tools and practical solutions, visit our websites to learn more. Equity imputes an intent to fulfill an obligation. If and as we claim our rights, our lives, and our substance, we stand in equity, and therefore equity will proceed on the basis that there is an intent to fulfill an obligation. And what obligation might that be? It is our own obligation to walk ourselves into balance and equality, to move this world into one based on these maxims of equity, to return to the delight of equality and wholeness in life. It is our intention by obligation fulfillment to make sure that all beings are afforded the basis of a life of integrity, abundance, and fulfillment. This is our obligation to the future, and it is our intent to fulfill it. As we receive, acknowledge, and accept our gift of life, we intend to see that all future generations shall also be so gifted. Equity acts in personam or on persons. What this means is the civil, legal, martial system we have been bonded into is a realm of fiction, populated by legal entities that do not exist in reality, but are only fictions of the mind. In equity, there are real people, real responsibility, and real liability. We can only face our own individual and collective consequences if we leave that realm of illusion and face ourselves in the real world. It means that equity will act on our living being or person, and not on the fictions behind which we hide and which the world system actors have used to their benefit to avoid their own responsibility through corporate limited liability. Equity will not allow that and therefore acts in personam, which means full personal responsibility. It ultimately means that we are responsible and cannot hide behind the illusions and the lies of limited liability, which means we must take full responsibility in all respects. Equity abhors a forfeiture. What is the biggest forfeiture we have perpetrated in this world? The forfeiture of life. The assertion that many must suffer and die so that the few can live and thrive. We have no equity in this world because we have tacitly allowed such an abhorrent condition that is the antithesis of life. We have demanded that many must forfeit their lives so that some can have the niceties and all the goodies that those who create them are denied. Is this equity? Is this equality? Is this balance? Equity does not require an idle gesture. Superficial platitudes and gestures mean nothing in the real world or to the substance of life. None of it is required. Only real effort and real commitment and real responsibility can elicit true equity. We stand on this principle and invite others to dig deep and do the same. He who comes into equity must come with clean hands. This maxim underwrites all the rest in that if we expect to have equity in our lives, we must come clean and not expect rewards based on hidden agendas, underlying fraud, or denial of responsibility. The inherent and substantive nature of equitable rights is that they are fair, just, equal, and balanced. If we want a stable world, we must come into it with clean hands, which requires true self-honesty, to take responsibility for our mistakes, our transgressions, and our participation in the wrongs of this world. Equity delights to do justice, and not by halves. Justice is not a halfway measure or proposition. Equity will not do justice by halves, but will only take into account what is just for all. That is the true and only definition of a world that is founded on the principles of true justice and equity. Equity will take jurisdiction to avoid a multiplicity of suits. We have been led astray into the litigious miasma of the legal and judicial system. It is a world of spite, revenge, greed, and war. It is a field of battle that seeks victory through stratagems and manipulation. It is one in which a multiplicity of suits is the order of the day for those who will prey on the undefended and the innocent. Therefore, equity will take jurisdiction to avoid that vastly distorted field of battle and bring all elements into view so that equity and justice can be done. Equity follows the law. When equity takes jurisdiction, it will still honor the precepts and requirements of the law. Therefore, there is a true balance in equity jurisprudence in the applications and principles of law side by side with the maxims of equity that assure justice. But what is law? Is it the legal codes we have discussed in this work? Or is it principles of justice based on fairness and mutual benefit combined with mutual respect? The common law has a basis in the principles of right and wrong and the proper balancing of accounts due to harm done or breaches of contracts. In this, equity will follow the law. Equity will not aid a volunteer. This is simple. Our entire system, as briefly described above, is one in which we have volunteered into the condition and circumstances that we have accepted and allowed. We have volunteered to be sureties for perpetual debt. We have volunteered to be debt slaves to a monetary system that has gone mad with greed. As such, we have no access to equity. We are only afforded the privileges and benefits that the system deems we deserve, and what can be given can be taken away. Equity will not come to our aid when we are a volunteer. Thus, we must rescind that voluntary status and stand on our rights with vigilance and equanimity in order to see equity done in this world and to receive the aid that equity and our equitable interests and beneficial rights has in store for us on all levels of our existence. Equity will not complete an imperfect gift. This too is simple. The gift we have been given is the gift of life. But it remains imperfect, for we have not completed it. We have instead volunteered to have our lives and our life force bonded into servitude, to be the cannon fodder and the substance from which the martial rules of war control everything. Instead of perfecting the gift of life, we have volunteered into a cult of death. When one truly delves deep into the world system, this is entirely self-evident. It is a world of death and destruction, and we have allowed ourselves to be the voluntary substance from which it is extracted. Our volunteer status ultimately means we have willingly participated in the destruction of life. We have never perfected the gift of life, and the consequences are manifest all around us. It is time to perfect the gift. Where equities are equal, the law will prevail. Law will settle matters when equities are equalized. But we have never done equity, and therefore we have no basis in law. We have no status or standing or capacities in the law, as we are only bonded in legal codified systems of bondage. We have abandoned our estate, or the gift of life, and thereby we have neither law nor equity, and we certainly do not have life in its fullest expression and potential. It's time to change that. Between equal equities, the first in order of time shall prevail. A prior claim of rights and equities prevails, and thus we, as a collective body, are proclaiming our equitable interests and beneficial rights, not only for ourselves, but for all of humanity. Because as the last maxim states below, we are the true owners as the beneficiaries of this global estate, if and when we perfect this gift of life and do what ought to be done. We are in fact the first in line with priority interest in our own lives and estates. They were the gift of creation at our very beginning, and we are the first in time once we claim that right and stand on it. Equity will not allow a statute to be used as a cloak for fraud. As is abundantly self-evident, the current legal system based on statutes and institutionalized rape of the population and pillage of the common good is nothing more than a massive cloak for fraud. We must enter equity to terminate such travesties of justice and pull the cloak and curtain away from the cowering wizards hiding behind their veils of illusion. Equity will not allow a trust to fail for want of a trustee. Our world and its system have been structured as a global trust. It is also an estate that we, the people, have abandoned, and the trust remains even though the trustees have abrogated their fiduciary duties, and therefore the trustee has departed. Nevertheless, a trust will not fail for want of the trustee. Therefore, what is required is that we step forward as the true owners of the trust and estate and command the trustees to adhere to their duties and not run wild with pillaging the substance of the trust, as we have allowed them to do for many centuries and even millennia. The time is now to say enough. It is time to stand and invoke a new trustee that holds life in sacred trust. Equity regards the beneficiary as the true owner. Finally, the beneficiary, we the people, the collective body of humanity, is in fact the true owner of the trust and global estate. But we too have abandoned our post. We have raped and pillaged the substance and fabric of life for our own self-interests and have abandoned the fiduciary responsibilities incumbent upon us to preserve and protect the gift of life. Now the hour is late. We are almost past the point of no return. If we wish to pass on the inheritance of life to succeeding generations, then we must act. And thus we humbly present this overview of the world system of bondage to provide the means to awake more who might come into the awareness and understanding we have shared. Overall, it is critical to remember this is not about revenge or making others pay for their deeds. The universal principles of equity and justice will take care of that. It is our purpose and intention to bring forth the gifts we have been given to contribute to the solutions as required. Because if one is not part of the solution, then one is part of the problem. If we wish to have a world that is best for all, then we must follow the maxim that to those who have more shall be given, which translates to the understanding that the duty and responsibility to bring forth a solution in this world belongs to those who have been given its gifts, and a very sacred duty it is. We accept those gifts, and thus perfect them in equitable standing, and we take upon ourselves the incumbent responsibility that such acceptance requires. Of course, the second part of that maxim states that to those who have not shall be taken away. This indicates that the denial of life will now have the utmost consequences for those who continue to choose to deny their responsibilities to life and to this world. This is an individual choice for all. We are in fact the true beneficiaries of life, but we can only perfect that gift with a commitment to the responsibility that lies before us to return this world to life, true order and equitable balance, in harmony with all of creation. Whatever you can do or dream, you can. Begin it. Boldness has genius, power, and magic in it. As soon as you trust yourself, you will know how to live. Knowing is not enough. We must apply. Willing is not enough. We must do. Correction does much, but encouragement does more. None are more hopelessly enslaved than those who falsely believe they are free. Every day we should hear at least one little song, read one good poem, see one exquisite picture, and if possible, speak a few sensible words. Magic is believing in yourself. If you can do that, you can make anything happen. Nothing is worth more than this day. I love those who yearn for the impossible. All the knowledge I possess, everyone else can acquire, but my heart is all my own. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe.